The peace that once ruled the world crumbled in an instant, as if the very land felt the weight of the looming evil. The sky, once bright and radiant, was swallowed by a dark eclipse, covering the earth with an eternal darkness. It was like the sun had hidden away and nothing could light up the future anymore. Ravenna Eldrin, a young hunter from a forgotten village, felt her heart race. Something was wrong, really wrong, and she knew it. In her dreams, a voice called to her, echoing from a lost relic and a bloodline of the Dawn Guardians she barely knew. The visions were fragmented but intense. Ravenna didn't get it, but she knew her life was about to change. The darkness was advancing. Grotesque monsters, creatures of the shadows, were rising from the darkest corners of the land. Yet, Ravenna felt something deeper, something in her blood, a force that was sleeping. The eclipse wasn't just some astronomical event. It was a sign, a warning that the balance was about to break. The young hunter didn't know what to do with this growing feeling, but she knew she had to act. She wasn't alone in this nightmare. At the tavern, villagers whispered about a lone warrior, Draven Kaler, a man marked by the scars of battle. Some said he knew more about what was happening. Others, like Zara Velric, a fiery archer with a mysterious past, spoke of a forgotten legend, a bloodline of the Dawn Guardians who could save the world. But was Ravenna one of them? Ravenna didn't think much about it until one night, with the sky still shadowed by the eclipse, she found Draven, the warrior. He was in deep reflection, his eyes empty from someone who had already faced the horrors of war. His scars were testimonies of battles long fought but still haunting him. He was there to help, but not without a price. Zara was ready to go on the journey, but the truth Ravenna was about to discover wouldn't be easy to swallow. In her hands was something no one understood yet, a power that connected her directly to the Crimson Heart, a relic she didn't even know existed. She felt the weight on her shoulders, like the fate of the world was about to be decided by her, but she had no idea how that could happen. The village was in ruins and Ravenna knew she needed to act, but how? The eclipse was the key. She couldn't just ignore the connection she felt with the call of both darkness and light. The future didn't look promising. In her dreams, the voice echoed again, this time louder. "You have the power in your hands, but you must choose, Ravenna," the voice said. She didn't know where it came from, but she felt like she had to follow it. Fear squeezed her chest, but courage spread through her like a flame that couldn't be put out. It wasn't just her destiny on the line. It was everyone's. And without realizing it, she had been chosen. With Draven and Zara by her side, Ravenna knew the road ahead would be tough. The darkness watched them from afar, waiting for the right moment to strike. But something else was hiding in the dark. Something Ravenna couldn't fully understand yet. With each step, the call grew stronger, harder to ignore. It was like the shadows around her were shaping into something more, something she would have to face. The first battle had only just begun, and she didn't know the extent of the sacrifice she would have to make. The weight of the Dawn Guardian's legacy was on her, and maybe the only way to defeat the darkness was to face her own shadow. However, as the group headed for the ancient ruins, Ravenna couldn't help but wonder. Was she ready? Was she willing to do whatever it took to save the world, even if that meant losing herself? The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Her journey had begun, and the darkness would never be the same after this. But what she didn't know yet was that this journey wouldn't just be an external battle, but an internal one. As the power awakened inside her, Ravenna found herself confronting her own doubts, her own fears. She knew the line between light and shadow was thin, and that at some point she would have to decide. Would she be ready to make the necessary sacrifice to restore the light and end the eclipse once and for all? The answer seemed distant, but the urgency of the situation forced her to keep moving forward without looking back. With the darkness closing in, Ravenna made a promise to herself. She would fight until the end. Whatever was lurking in the shadows, she wasn't backing down. But what she didn't know was that the real battle would begin when she finally touched the Crimson Heart. And when that happened, she wouldn't be the same. Ravenna's destiny, like everyone else's, was about to be decided. But the question was, how far would she go to save the world? Ravenna walked with a tight heart as the faint rays of the moon lit up the broken stones of the ancient ruins. With each step she took, the sound of her boots echoed between the stone walls, a sound that seemed to blend with the heavy silence of the place, as if the ruins themselves were holding secrets. The cold wind of the night cut through her skin, and the feeling that something was watching her every move kept her alert. The ruins of the Dawn were not just a remnant of a distant past. They were a portal to lost knowledge, knowledge that could change everything. Ravenna felt the tension building inside her chest. She knew she was close to something grand, but she also knew that the weight of this discovery could be too much to bear. The story of the Dawn Guardians wasn't just any legend. It was a buried truth, hidden from the world, and the fact that she was about to reveal this secret was both a blessing and a curse. Draven, her companion, walked a few steps behind, his expression hard as always. His dark eyes were fixed on the ruins as if he was trying to dig something out of them. For him, this place wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a memory. It was painful, a reminder of what he had lost and what was still to come. Ravenna knew how much he avoided these places, how much the past haunted him. But now here he couldn't escape. The ruins were a bridge between the past and the future, and he'd have to cross it no matter how tough it got. Zara, the young archer traveling with them, kept a slight distance, always on high alert for any movement, any sound that broke the stillness of the night. Her senses were always sharp, and Ravenna could tell she was more than just a skilled warrior, she was a survivor. She knew something was about to go down, something that could change everything. Zara moved closer to Ravenna, her voice low, almost a whisper. "You sure this is gonna work? Feels like we're walking straight into a trap." Ravenna glanced at her, giving a small smile, trying to ease the tension in the air. "I don't know what we're gonna find here, but something tells me we're on the right track." As they got closer to the heart of the ruins, Ravenna felt the change in the air. The wind, which had seemed like just a breeze before, now felt stronger, sharper, as if some invisible force was trying to push them back. The ground, covered in moss and broken stones, seemed to vibrate beneath their feet, and an odd sensation ran through her, like the earth itself was alive, reacting to their presence. She reached out and touched one of the columns, the ancient stone cold to the touch, yet somehow pulsing, like it held a dormant energy waiting to be awakened. Draven moved closer, his gaze skeptical. "What do you feel?" he asked, his voice deep. Ravenna closed her eyes for a moment, trying to listen to what the earth was whispering. "I feel something. Something watching us. Waiting." Suddenly, a surge of energy shot through her veins, and a vision took over her mind. It was like time had dissolved around her, and the ruins had transformed into a completely different landscape. She saw the Guardians of the Dawn, powerful women in shining golden armor, fighting against a dark force that seemed to devour everything in its path. The battlefield was on fire, and the voices of the women were a mix of battle cries and words in an ancient language, a language Ravenna didn't understand, but somehow felt deep in her soul. "The Crimson Heart," they whispered, their eyes fixed on something beyond Ravenna, something she couldn't yet see. Zara noticed Ravenna's expression, concerned about what was happening. "Ravenna, what are you seeing?" she asked, her voice urgent but soft, trying not to draw attention. Ravenna couldn't answer right away. The images were so vivid in her mind, so intense, it felt like the Guardians were standing right in front of her, inviting her to join their fight. I saw them," Ravenna finally managed to say, her voice shaking. "I saw the Guardians, and the Crimson Heart. They were trying to protect something, but they failed. Whatever it is, it's coming." Before she could fully process what that meant, an explosion of light made the ground tremble. Ravenna was thrown back, crashing into one of the columns. The air around them thickened, and a mysterious force seemed to pull them toward the center of the ruins, where a stone carved with ancient symbols began to glow brightly. The light that radiated from it was almost blinding, like a beacon calling them into the unknown. Draven, ever cautious, quickly got up, his hand on his sword. "I think we'd better stay alert. This could be a trap or worse." But Ravenna, drawn to the light of the stone, couldn't resist. Something inside her knew this was the key to understanding what was happening, to understanding what the Guardians of the Dawn had tried, and failed, to protect. She reached out and touched the stone's surface. The moment her fingers made contact with the cold, rough surface, a wave of energy enveloped her, flowing through her body with a force she'd never imagined. The visions of the Guardians intensified, and she felt, more than ever, that her destiny was tied to theirs. The vision of the warrior women in battle became even more vivid. Ravenna could feel the weight of the sword in her hand, the pressure of the fight, the sense of an impending sacrifice. They had lost, but for a reason. The Crimson Heart wasn't just an artifact, it was a power that could either destroy or save. But the real question was, Who was truly ready to control that power? Ravenna. Zara's voice pulled Ravenna back to reality. She was tense, her breath coming in short gasps. What's going on? What did you see? Ravenna looked at her friend, trying to organize her thoughts. I saw the Guardians. They were trying to protect the Crimson Heart, but something went wrong. And now it's my turn. The last part came out with surprising force. She didn't know what that meant, but she knew there was no turning back. The path ahead was clear and she would have to face it, whatever it was. The stone began to glow brighter, and the shadows of the ruins stretched long, dancing as if they were preparing for a battle. Ravenna, Draven, and Zara exchanged glances, aware that they were about to uncover an ancient secret that would change everything. And deep down, Ravenna felt a mix of fear and determination. She was no longer just searching for answers, she was preparing for a destiny bigger than herself. The light that radiated from the ancient stone seemed to intensify as Ravenna and her companions approached. The bright glow filled the space around them, wrapped in an energy that felt both familiar and unknown. Ravenna could feel her heart racing, as if the stone was connected to something deep inside her, something waiting to be revealed. Draven, ever cautious, moved forward with a wary look. He knew something big was about to happen, but he didn't know if he was ready for whatever it was. Ravenna, he said quietly but firmly, we can't just touch this. This power might be more dangerous than you think. Ravenna looked at him, her eyes steady. I know, but I have to do this. I need to understand what happened here. What he's calling me. Draven hesitated for a moment but didn't say anything more. He knew Ravenna had already made her decision. Zara, who had been watching the scene carefully, looked at the stone and then back at Ravenna. What if it's a trick? What if this is just a trap to catch us? The young archer wasn't wrong to be worried. What they were about to do could be a dangerous step, but Ravenna felt like she had no choice. The visions, the voices of the Guardians of the Aurora, everything seemed to be pulling her in some way. The stone was the key and she knew it. It's not a trick, Ravenna said confidently. I can feel it. I'm on the right path. Just trust me. With those words, Ravenna reached out to the stone, her touch hesitant but determined. The moment her fingers touched the stone's surface, a wave of pure energy enveloped her. It was like time stopped for an instant. Everything around her disappeared, leaving only her and the pulsing power of the stone. She felt the power of the past flow through her veins, like the voices of the Guardians of the Aurora were echoing in her mind, transmitting ancient knowledge and secrets kept for centuries. Images began to form in front of her eyes, visions from a distant time when the Guardians were at their full strength. Ravenna saw the women fighting against the forces of darkness, but she also saw their flaws, their weaknesses, the crucial moment when it all seemed lost. They had made a sacrifice, and that sacrifice was connected to her now. She didn't fully understand it, but she knew her destiny was tied to that moment in the past. The visions began to intensify, and Ravenna saw the Crimson Heart, a shimmering gem in the shape of a red crystal, radiating a light so bright it seemed to consume everything around it. She felt a sharp pain, as if the very power of the gem was burning her soul. The Guardians were struggling to control the gem, to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Ravenna heard a voice, soft and full of wisdom, speaking in her ear. The Crimson Heart is both a blessing and a curse. It has the power to destroy or to save. The true Guardian must know when to use it and when to let it be. Ravenna fought to keep her sanity in the face of the vision's intensity, but the words echoed in her mind like a mantra. The true Guardian. She felt that this truth was more than just an ancient lesson. It was a warning, a responsibility she was about to take on. As the visions began to fade, Ravenna pulled her hand away from the stone, dizzy and disoriented. The light that had once filled the space slowly started to fade, and the air felt heavier, laden with the weight of what she had just experienced. Draven and Zara quickly moved toward her, their faces full of concern. Ravenna, what happened? Are you okay? Zara asked, her voice trembling. Ravenna took a deep breath, trying to regain control. I saw the Crimson Heart. And the Guardians? They failed, but there's more. Something I don't fully understand yet. She looked at the stone, now darkened, and felt a growing sense of urgency. We need to go. Whatever it is, it's coming. Suddenly, a strange vibration ran through the ground beneath their feet, like the very earth itself was reacting to the energy that had been released. The walls of the ruins began to shake, and Ravina heard a low, almost growling sound coming from deep within the earth. "What's happening?" Draven shouted, gripping his sword more tightly. "Something's not right." Ravina looked toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to show, like a promise that something important was about to happen. She felt a presence approaching, something powerful, something that could no longer be ignored. The earth trembled even more, and the sense of urgency became palpable. Ravina knew the choice she had made by touching the stone had awakened something, and that something wasn't there to help them. Something in the shadows was moving, and they were the targets. "The battle's just beginning," Ravina said, her voice low but full of fierce determination. "Now we need to get ready for what's coming next." The feeling that destiny had chosen her was stronger than ever. She knew what was about to happen wouldn't just be a fight for survival, it would be a battle for the future. A future where the Crimson Heart would be the key to determining what would remain of the world. The sound of the tremor in the earth didn't stop, and now it seemed to vibrate not just beneath their feet, but through their entire bodies. Every step Ravina took made the rocks around them shift, like the world itself was twisting, preparing for a cataclysm. The air was thick and heavy, as if a cloud of dust was about to swallow everything. Draven and Zara, with their keen senses, seemed to feel the same pressure. Their eyes were locked, alert to every movement, but neither of them could pinpoint exactly where the danger was coming from. Everything around them seemed to change, as if the scenery was warping. Ravina felt the power growing inside of her, and the fear she'd felt before was beginning to turn into something stronger. It was like the stone, that Crimson Heart, was connecting to something within her, something she still didn't fully understand. Images from her childhood and the secrets of her lineage came to the surface, but the feeling was strange. As if the power she now controlled wasn't just hers, but that of everyone who had come before her. A sense of responsibility settled in her chest, a growing pressure that her mission was about to be revealed in full. With a deep sigh, she looked at Draven and Zara. The two were at her side, but it felt like the whole world was against them. Draven, the relentless warrior with his sharp sword always ready to fight to the end, was tense. Zara, the clever thief with her calculating gaze, was also ready for action. But there was something different about them. A feeling that nothing would be enough. The threat approaching was greater than any of their previous enemies. Ravina knew the fight wouldn't be won with steel or wit. The battle was now at the very edges of reality itself, a direct confrontation with forces that couldn't even be fully understood. The ground started cracking with this terrifying roar. The fissure split wide open, sending rocks and dirt flying everywhere. Raven jumped back, and at that exact moment, a dark shadow emerged from the deep hole forming beneath them. It wasn't just a physical presence, it was spiritual too, like the air around it got heavier, denser. Its eyes were glowing this fiery red, like some kind of hellfire burning deep inside. The creature's movements were slow, but the pressure coming off it felt like a storm was about to break loose. Raven somehow knew this wasn't just some regular enemy. This wasn't some evil creature, some shadow trying to mess up their plans. No, this presence was something much older, something that had been buried deep in the earth for centuries, forgotten by generations, but now, as it awoke, it brought with it a power that couldn't be ignored. "You woke what shouldn't have been touched," the creature hissed, its voice echoing through the rocks around them. It was so dark, it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Now you and your friends will pay for it." Raven's heart raced. She glanced over at Draven, who was already gripping his sword tightly, ready to strike, but Raven felt something different. It was like the creature's power was real, something that could swallow up the light around them. Draven wouldn't be enough. Zara, as quick as she was, wouldn't stop what was coming. Raven locked eyes with Zara and felt a deeper connection than she ever had before. She knew her friends were as ready as she was to fight until the end, but she wasn't sure it'd be enough. The fear of the unknown weighed heavily on all of them, and the silence that followed was deafening. The creature grinned maliciously, and Raven could feel the weight of its stare. "I am Azrael, the Soul Devourer. You and your friends stand no chance against me." The creature slowly raised its hand, and in the next second, a wave of dark energy spread from the ground around it, like a rising tide. The air turned colder, sharper, and Raven felt the weight of that force, like she was being dragged underwater, gasping for air, no escape. Draven charged, his sword cutting through the air, but as soon as he got close, Azrael reached out. The dark energy expanded, wrapping around Draven, lifting him off the ground, his muscles tensed in a futile attempt to fight the power that held him still. The creature looked at Raven and, with a guttural laugh, said, "You're just as weak as all the others who tried to challenge fate. You have no idea what you're up against." But Raven didn't back down. She could feel the warmth of the stone against her chest, the presence of the Guardians of the Dawn whispering in her mind as if guiding her. "I can do this. I have the power to stop it," she whispered to herself. She knew she was just starting to understand the Crimson Heart, but in that moment, her gut told her that her intuition was stronger than any doubt. The creature, noticing the shift in the atmosphere around them, mocked her again. "You can't defeat me, girl. The Crimson Heart is just a fraction of the power you're waking up. I am the end, the destroyer of souls. You'll never be able to control the power you're touching." But Raven wasn't listening anymore. The energy from the stone started to intensify, and the connection with it became clearer. It was like the very essence of the stone was merging with her soul, with her being. The light radiating from her skin wasn't just light, it was pure energy, a manifestation of the power awakening inside her. She felt her body vibrate with that force, and when she raised her hand, the beam of light that shot out from her fingers was so bright that it blinded Azrael for a moment. The creature was thrown back, but instead of giving in, it rose up, angrier than ever. "You think you can stop me with that weak light?" Azrael shouted, its voice distorted with fury. "You're playing with fire and you're gonna get burned." Raven took a deep breath, feeling the energy pulse through her veins. She knew the fight was just getting started, and that despite everything she'd have to do more to beat Azrael. Something beyond the strength of light. She didn't know exactly what it was, but something inside her was taking shape, a deeper understanding of her destiny, her role in this shattered world. The battle wouldn't be won just with beams of light. It would be won with wisdom, with sacrifice, and with the acceptance that to save what was left, she'd have to embrace the power, but also the responsibility that came with it. Raven felt the heat building up inside her, but also the weight of a truth she didn't fully understand yet. The energy from the Crimson Heart pulsed with intensity, flooding her body with a sense of absolute power. But at the same time there was a feeling of emptiness. What do you do with this power? How do you control something so vast and merciless without losing yourself in the process? She looked at her friends, still battling the creature's forces, and she knew the only way to win wasn't just brute strength, but with a deep understanding of what was truly at stake. Azrael, furious at Raven's resistance, charged again. His red eyes burned with uncontrollable rage, and his dark energy seemed to fill the air, pressing down on everything around them. Draven, still struggling to break free from the dark energy that held him, had eyes full of determination, but the weight of the threat made them almost powerless. Zara, quicker than before, had already dodged the initial wave of attack, but she knew that this battle couldn't be won just with you're just postponing the inevitable. Azrael yelled with a cruel smile, his voice echoing through the caves. "The Crimson Heart can't be controlled, just like fate. What's coming is the ruin of everything." Raven didn't let herself be shaken. She felt every word like a blow, but she knew they were just echoes of a distant reality. Her own bloodline, the Guardians of the Dawn, had been forged through sacrifice and loss, and she, more than anyone, knew that power demanded something in return. The last key to the Crimson Heart wasn't strength or control, but wisdom and the courage to do what needed to be done, even if it meant losing herself in the process. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to connect with the energy of the stone, with the essence of everything it represented. What she didn't know, but felt with every fiber of her being, was that the power of the stone wasn't about destroying evil, but transmuting it, changing the essence of everything that was corrupted around her. The real battle wasn't against Azrael, but against what he represented: hopelessness, senseless destruction. "I'm not you," Raven murmured, her eyes opening, filled with an unwavering calm. "I won't give in to fear and destruction. Power isn't a curse, it's a choice. And I choose to use it to save, not destroy." With those words, Raven lifted the Crimson Heart to the sky, letting its light expand, stronger and more intense than before. Azrael tried to move again, his dark energy colliding with the growing light, but instead of consuming the bright energy, he seemed to be diluted by it. The darkness that had once dominated the air slowly began to dissipate, becoming less dense, more unstable. Raven felt a growing connection with the essence of the stone, and the power of her words and determination began to shift the flow of the battle. The balance was starting to be restored, but the price would be high. "You can't defeat fate," Azrael screamed, but his body was already starting to disintegrate in the light. His screams echoed through the caves, but they were no longer of victory. They were of desperation, of a force that was being broken and dissolved. Raven didn't know how much longer this fight would last. She didn't know if the power of the Crimson Heart would last long enough to dispel all the darkness Azrael had brought. But one thing was clear: the sacrifice of her own being might be the only way to restore the balance the world so desperately needed. With one final burst of energy, Raven channeled all the power the stone offered her into a beam of light so bright it lit up the entire cave, blinding Azrael and forcing him to vanish into the shadows that were finally dissipating. But the cost of all of this would be great. Raven felt a weakness growing inside her, as if the stone's energy was draining something essential from her being. She looked at her companions, seeing them approach, but she knew something was changing. They were safe for now, but Raven felt that her role in that moment, her mission, was far from finished. The Crimson Heart might have been used to defeat Azrael, but the true legacy it carried was deeper than any physical battle. It was about the inner journey, the reconciliation between light and darkness, and the acceptance of the sacrifice needed to achieve true peace. Zara approached her, her eyes full of gratitude but also concern. "Are you okay?" Raven didn't respond immediately. She looked at the stone in her hands, which now seemed less intense, quieter. "I don't know," she finally replied, her voice weaker. "But I know we did what needed to be done." The cave was silent now, but the world around them was still in ruins. Their fate, as always, would be to carry on, face new threats and challenges. But Raven knew more than ever that the real battle wasn't just about saving the world, but about the choices each person makes, the responsibility that comes with power, and the courage to move forward, even when the path ahead is uncertain. With Raven's power restoring the balance, but also leaving an indelible mark on her soul, the cycle of ruin and resurgence continued. She and her allies would still have to face many adversities, but now more than ever she knew that true strength came from within, and that, perhaps, the greatest sacrifice was the real key to the future. As the light of the Crimson Heart finally faded, a sense of calm enveloped the cave. The darkness that had lingered for so long seemed to retreat, as if it knew its time had come. Raven still felt the weight of the stone in her hands, but something had changed. It wasn't just her power, but her understanding of what it represented. What had started as a mission of vengeance and destruction was now turning into a mission of healing and balance. Raven looked at her companions, their faces marked by fatigue, but also by renewed hope. Draven, Zara, and the others were there, alive, but also aware that what they had faced was just a small part of what fate still had in store for them. Their journey was far from over, but there was a new strength among them, a strength that didn't come just from the battles they had won, but from the choices they made along the way. The soft wind blowing through the cave opening seemed to whisper a warning, but Raven was ready. She knew that the power of the Crimson Heart wouldn't be her only weapon. What she carried now was something deeper, the wisdom to understand that sometimes the biggest sacrifice isn't death, but the act of living and pushing forward, even when the future is uncertain. "This isn't the end," Raven said, her voice steady but calm. "This is just the beginning." And with those words she turned to her allies, guiding them out of the cave. The world was still in ruins, but hope had been planted. The balance, though temporary, had been restored. But Raven knew the real test was yet to come. The legacy she and her friends had started to rebuild was far from done. The power of the Crimson Heart wasn't just something to be used in times of war, but something that came with a responsibility that went beyond the simple desire for victory. As they walked toward the moonlight, Raven felt a growing peace within her. She knew the world would never be perfect, but she was ready to continue her journey. Because in the end, the greatest power wasn't destruction, but the ability to heal, to start over, and to find hope in the middle of chaos. And with that, the story comes to an end, but leaves a deep mark of reflection. The fate of Raven and her companions isn't finished. On the contrary, every step they take now will lead to a new adventure. They know that the real challenge isn't just in the battles, but in how to choose to live after every sacrifice, every loss. Their journey is far from over, but with every new step, the hope for a more balanced world shines brighter. If you like this story, don't forget to leave a comment, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more stories like this. I'll catch you in the next video.